They're watching you differently now. Have you noticed the way conversations pause when you enter, the way eyes shift when someone mentions something you predicted weeks ago, the way people suddenly get quiet when topics come up that you casually mentioned before anyone else saw it coming? There's something about you that makes people nervous, and it's not what you say, it's what you don't say. It's the knowing look in your eyes, the calm smile when chaos erupts, the silence that somehow speaks louder than their explanations ever could. You've become the person they can't figure out, the one who sees patterns before they form, the one who reads situations like an open book while everyone else is still struggling with the first page. And what's driving them absolutely wild is that you're not trying to prove anything. You're not flexing your knowledge. You're not broadcasting your insights. You're simply existing with a level of awareness that makes their pretending look exhausting. They're starting to realize something that terrifies them. You've been 10 steps ahead this entire time, and you never once felt the need to announce it. Here's what's really happening behind those curious glances and nervous laughs. People are talking. Not the shallow gossip they used to spread when they thought you were ordinary. This is different. This is the kind of talk that happens in whispers. The kind that starts with someone saying, "Have you noticed how they always seem to know?" followed by uncomfortable silence. Because acknowledging your awareness means admitting their own limitation. It means confessing that while they were performing, you were observing. While they were assuming, you were understanding. While they were reacting, you were already 3 moves ahead. You didn't announce your awakening. You didn't make a grand declaration about your growth. You simply stopped explaining yourself to people who weren't listening anyway. You stopped sharing your insights with minds that weren't ready. You stopped casting pearls before swine, and in that silence you became exponentially more powerful. Now they're scrambling to understand what changed, never realizing that you didn't change at all. I am sorry at all. You simply stopped dimming your light to make their darkness comfortable. And that shift, that quiet revolution, is what has everyone talking. Before we go deeper into this truth, if you're feeling this message in your soul, if you recognize yourself in these words, then you know this isn't random. You were meant to find this today. Press that like button, subscribe to this channel, and drop 888 in the comments to activate the frequency of abundance and recognition. Let the universe know you're ready to step fully into your knowing, because what we're about to explore will validate everything you've been sensing. Stay locked in, this is where it gets real. Remember when you used to explain yourself constantly? When you'd share your observations, your predictions, your insights, trying to help people see what you saw? Remember how exhausting that was? How your warnings went unheeded? How your guidance was dismissed until it was too late? That frustration you felt wasn't weakness. It was preparation. It was the universe teaching you one of the most powerful lessons a chosen one can learn. Not everyone deserves access to your knowing. So you stopped. Not out of bitterness or revenge. You stopped because you realized that pearls don't explain their value to those who see them as ordinary stones. You stopped defending your intuition. You stopped justifying your boundaries. You stopped trying to convince people of truths they'd eventually discover on their own. And in that cessation, something extraordinary happened. Your power multiplied. Your clarity sharpened. Your accuracy became undeniable, because you were no longer leaking your energy trying to convince the unconvincible. Now, when situations unfold exactly as you sensed they would, you don't say, "I told you so." You simply observe, with that knowing calm that makes people deeply uncomfortable. When people ask how you knew, you offer a gentle smile and change the subject. Not because you're hiding your gifts, but because you've learned that explaining sight to those who choose blindness is an exercise in futility. Your silence isn't secrecy, it's sovereignty. It's the mark of someone who's learned that true power doesn't need validation from those who lack the capacity to comprehend it. People are starting to notice this shift. They're watching how you move through situations that would overwhelm others with complete composure. They see you sidestep drama before it fully forms. They watch you avoid toxic people before their toxicity becomes obvious to everyone else. They're witnessing you make decisions that seem random until weeks later when everyone realizes you were positioning yourself perfectly for what was coming. And the question that's burning in their minds, haunting their conversations, keeping them up at night is simple. How do you know? Here's what's really unsettling them. It's not just that you know things before they happen. It's that you know them. You know their patterns. You know their games. You know their masks. You've been quietly observing, processing, understanding, while they assumed you were oblivious. They performed their carefully crafted personas in front of you, never suspecting that you saw right through the costume to the insecurity underneath. They smiled in your face while plotting behind your back, never imagining that you felt their energy shift before they even formed the thought. You've been reading them like children's books while they convinced themselves they were complex mysteries. Every fake compliment, every backhanded comment, every subtle attempt to undermine you, you caught it all. You just chose not to react. You chose to gather information instead of seeking confrontation. You chose to watch their patterns rather than interrupt their performance. And now that time has passed and their true colors are showing to everyone else. They're having a terrifying realization. You knew all along. The panic in their eyes when they understand this is almost satisfying, isn't it? That moment when they realize that every conversation they had about you, you somehow sensed. Every plan they made to sideline you, you were already 10 steps ahead of. Every lie they told, you saw through but chose not to expose immediately. They're backtracking through memories, reanalyzing interactions, trying to figure out how much you actually know. And the answer is more than they can handle facing. You've been collecting data while they were collecting enemies. This is why they're careful around you now. This is why their energy shifts when you enter a space. It's not respect born from admiration. It's respect born from fear. Fear of being fully seen. Fear of being truly known. Fear that one day you'll decide to speak what you've been silently observing. They're realizing that your silence wasn't ignorance. It was strategy. And now they're trapped between wanting to know what you know and being terrified of the answer. Let's talk about the elephant in every room you enter, your track record. How many times have you casually mentioned something, only to have it unfold exactly as you described? How many situations have you warned people about, only to watch them ignore you and then crash directly into the consequence? How many times have you felt a shift coming, adjusted your position, and watched others scramble when the change hit? They're keeping score now, and your accuracy rate is making them deeply uncomfortable. At first, they called it luck. Then they called it coincidence. Then they stopped calling it anything and started watching you like a weather vane, trying to discern which way you're leaning before they make their moves. They've noticed that when you pull back from someone, that person's mask usually falls within weeks. They've seen that when you shift your energy towards something, opportunities start appearing around it. They've witnessed you avoid disasters that seemed impossible to predict, and they can't explain it, which means they can't control it, which means you have something they don't. This isn't about being psychic in some mystical movie sense. This is about being tuned in, about reading energy signatures, about recognizing patterns in human behavior, about trusting your internal guidance system even when external evidence hasn't caught up yet. You've developed a level of perceptual awareness that most people never cultivate because they're too busy being distracted. While they were drowning in noise, you learned to hear the signal. While they were obsessing over drama, you were observing the underlying currents. While they were reacting to surfaces, you were reading the depths. Now they're starting to ask you questions, subtle at first. What do you think about this situation? Do you get any weird feelings about that person? Should I be worried about this? They're fishing, testing, trying to access your knowing without admitting they need it. And you, in your wisdom, offer just enough to be helpful without giving away your full sight. Because you've learned that people don't want truth. They want confirmation of what they already believe. And when you offer truth that contradicts their narrative, they shoot the messenger. So you've become selective, sharing your insights only with those who've earned the right to receive them. Power dynamics fascinate you, don't they? Not because you crave control, but because you understand how energy works. You've watched people try every trick in the manipulation playbook, and you've remained unmoved. Not because you're cold, but because you see the strings before they're pulled. You recognize guilt trips before the first word leaves their mouth. You sense love bombing before the excessive praise begins. You feel boundary testing before the casual violation occurs. And this immunity to manipulation is perhaps the most threatening thing about you. Manipulators rely on blind spots. They need you to be unaware of the game being played. They require your ignorance of their tactics to operate successfully. But you don't have those blind spots anymore. You burned them away through painful lessons, through betrayals that taught you to trust your instincts, through experiences that forced you to develop discernment. Now, when someone tries to manipulate you, it's like watching a child try to fool a master magician. You see every move before it's made. You recognize every tactic before it's deployed. You're immune. And that immunity is infuriating to those who've built their entire social strategy on exploiting others' naivety. They can't guilt you into sacrificing your peace. They can't charm you into ignoring red flags. They can't intimidate you into silence. They can't love bomb you into lowering your standards. They can't gaslight you into questioning your reality. Every weapon in their arsenal bounces off the armor of your awareness. And this isn't arrogance. It's hard-won wisdom. It's the result of being burned enough times that you learn to spot fire from a distance. It's the consequence of being lied to so thoroughly that you developed an internal lie detector that never sleeps. What's really getting under their skin is that you don't announce this immunity. You don't give them the satisfaction of knowing you've decoded their game. You simply don't react. You don't engage. You don't take the bait. You observe their attempts with detached curiosity, like a scientist watching a predictable chemical reaction, and your non-reaction is somehow more devastating than any confrontation could be, because it communicates something they can't argue against. You're beyond their reach. You're operating on a level they can't access. You've transcended the game they're still desperately trying to win. Walk into any space and watch what happens. Before you say a word, before you make a gesture, before you offer a smile, the energy shifts. It's subtle but unmistakable. Fake people get quieter, liars get nervous, pretenders adjust their masks, and authentic souls relax. This isn't ego, this is presence. The kind of presence that only comes from someone who's done deep internal work, someone who's cleared their own darkness enough to recognize it in others, someone who's faced their shadow and integrated it, making them immune to being triggered by others' projections. You don't try to read the room, you simply exist and the room reveals itself to you. It's like you're walking around with invisible sonar, constantly receiving information about the energetic state of your environment, who's being genuine, who's performing, who's comfortable in their authenticity, who's drowning in their pretense, who's safe to be vulnerable with, who's collecting information to use against you later. This isn't paranoia, it's perception. And it's so finely tuned now that you don't even have to think about it. It's automatic, instinctual, undeniable. People feel this in your presence. They feel seen in a way that either comforts them or terrifies them depending on what they're hiding. The ones with nothing to hide gravitate toward you. They feel safe in your non-judgment. They sense that you see their humanity rather than their performance. But the ones wearing masks feel exposed around you. They get fidgety, they over-explain, they fill silence with unnecessary words. They laugh too loud or avoid your eyes entirely. They're having a physical reaction to being in the presence of someone who can see through their carefully constructed facade. This is why they talk about you. This is why your name keeps coming up in conversations you're not part of, because being around you is an experience that lingers. It forces people to confront their own authenticity or lack thereof. Your presence asks a question without saying a word. Are you being real right now? And for those who aren't, that question is unbearable. So they talk. They analyze. They try to figure out your secret, never understanding that there is no secret. There's just someone who stopped lying to themselves and therefore can't be lied to by others. One of your most refined skills is knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. You don't word vomit your observations. You don't share every insight the moment it crystallizes. You've learned that timing is everything, that premature revelation is often wasted on unreceptive audiences, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do with knowledge is hold it until the perfect moment when it will have maximum impact and minimum waste. This drives certain people absolutely insane. They're used to people who can't hold water, who spill secrets, who reveal their hand too early, who broadcast their knowledge as soon as they acquire it. But you're a vault. You collect information, you process patterns, you understand dynamics, and you reveal only what serves the highest good at the moment it's most needed. This isn't manipulation, it's wisdom. It's understanding that not every truth needs to be spoken to every person at every time. Some truths are meant to be discovered. Some lessons must be learned through experience. Some revelations only have power when they emerge naturally, rather than being forced prematurely. People fish for your opinions constantly now. They throw out topics trying to get you to reveal your position. They ask seemingly innocent questions designed to extract your knowledge. They watch your reactions to see if you'll slip and show your hand. But you've mastered the art of the non-answer, the thoughtful the gentle subject change, the ambiguous response that could mean everything or nothing depending on interpretation. You're not being evasive. You're being intentional. You're protecting your energy from those who would consume it without appreciation. You're safeguarding your insights from those who would weaponize them rather than honor them. And here's what they're slowly realizing. When you do choose to speak, it matters. Your words carry weight because they're not diluted by constant commentary. Your insights land with impact because they're not buried in unnecessary explanation. Your revelations shift perspectives because they're delivered with precision rather than scattered with abandon. You've become someone whose opinion is sought because it's rarely freely given. Someone whose insight is valued because it's not constantly available. Someone whose truth is trusted because it's been proven accurate through selective strategic revelation. This is mastery, and it's making you simultaneously sought after and intimidating. Here's something that's dawning on people slowly, uncomfortably. All those times you stayed quiet when they made terrible decisions, all those moments you stepped back and let them learn through experience, all those situations where you could have intervened but chose not to. You weren't being passive, you weren't being neglectful, you were giving them the dignity of their own journey. You were allowing them the lessons they needed even when you could see the pain coming. Because you understood something most people don't. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face the consequences of their choices. But there's another layer to this that's even more unsettling for them to contemplate. Sometimes your silence was protection. Your silence protected them from knowing things they weren't ready to know. Your silence protected them from truths that would have devastated them prematurely. Your silence protected them from your full sight of who they were being when they couldn't yet handle that reflection. You saw their selfishness, their manipulation, their cruelty, their delusion, and you chose not to mirror it back immediately because you knew it would destroy them before they were ready to change. This is perhaps the most advanced form of compassion, to see someone fully, flaws and all, and choose not to weaponize that sight, to have the receipts, the evidence, the undeniable proof of someone's toxicity, and choose not to expose it until they've had time to grow, to carry the burden of knowing while allowing others the grace of ignorance until they're strong enough to face themselves. This isn't weakness. It's not being a doormat. It's being so secure in your own knowing that you don't need immediate vindication. You can wait. You can allow, you can trust that truth reveals itself in perfect timing without your forceful intervention. Now that time has passed and many of these people are finally seeing themselves clearly, they're having a disturbing realization. You knew. You've always known, and you chose grace over exposure. You chose patience over punishment. You chose their evolution over your ego. And while part of them is grateful, another part is absolutely terrified. Because if you saw all that and stayed quiet, what else do you see? What other truths are you holding with that same patient mercy? What other aspects of themselves are you aware of that they're still hiding from? Your protection of them from themselves has become both a gift and a source of profound unease. There was a time when you cared deeply about being understood, when you wanted people to see your value, when their recognition mattered, when their approval felt important. That version of you was vulnerable to manipulation through praise and vulnerable to devastation through criticism. But something shifted. Through repeated betrayals, through enough false friends, through sufficient disappointments, you developed something rare and powerful: immunity to external validation. You stopped needing them to see you. You stopped requiring their acknowledgement. You stopped seeking their approval. This immunity is perhaps the most threatening evolution you've undergone, because it removes every lever they had to control you. They can't bait you with compliments because you're not starving for praise. They can't wound you with criticism because you've learned to trust your own assessment over their projection. They can't isolate you with rejection because you've found sufficiency in solitude. They can't manipulate you with inclusion because you're no longer desperate to belong. You've become untouchable, not through arrogance, but through self-acknowledge, not through coldness, but through wholeness. Watch their confusion when their tactics don't work anymore, when they offer false praise and you receive it politely but unmoved, when they withdraw attention and you don't chase, when they criticize and you don't defend, when they exclude and you don't protest. They're experiencing something rare, someone who's genuinely complete without their input, someone who doesn't need their story about who you are because you know who you are. Someone who isn't playing the game of external validation because you found internal validation infinitely more reliable. This is making them reassess everything. If you don't need their approval, they can't control you. If you don't fear their rejection, they can't threaten you. If you don't crave their inclusion, they can't leverage you. If you don't believe their criticism, they can't diminish you. You've become someone who exists outside their system of social manipulation, and people who've built their entire social strategy around controlling others through validation and withdrawal don't know what to do with someone who's immune. So they talk, they analyze, they try to understand your secret, never quite grasping that there is no secret, beyond the simple truth that you decided your peace mattered more than their perception. Something fascinating happened when you started pulling back, when you stopped showing up to every gathering, when you stopped responding to every message immediately, when you stopped being available for every crisis, when you stopped performing for every audience. People started noticing. Not because they missed your energy necessarily, but because your absence revealed something they'd been taking for granted. You were the glue. You were the peace, you were the voice of reason, you were the emotional anchor, and when you removed yourself, chaos filled the space you left behind. Suddenly, groups you used to balance started falling apart. Friendships you used to mediate started fracturing. Spaces you used to calm started feeling tense. Situations you used to de-escalate started spiraling, and people started talking. Where are they? Why aren't they coming around anymore? Did we do something? And the answer, which you never needed to speak out loud, was simple. You got tired of being the adult in rooms full of children. You got exhausted being the therapist no one ever thought to check on. You got drained being the lighthouse that everyone took for granted until they hit the rocks without your guidance. Your absence wasn't punishment, it was preservation. You weren't trying to teach them a lesson. You were trying to save yourself from exhaustion. But the lesson happened anyway, because in your absence, they're finally seeing what you contributed. They're finally recognizing what you held together. They're finally appreciating what you prevented. And now they're talking about you in reverent tones, with a mix of regret and respect, wondering if there's any way to bring back what they didn't realize they had until it was gone. But here's what's really keeping you in their conversations. It's not just that they miss what you brought. It's that your absence revealed their own dysfunction. Without you there to smooth over conflicts, they're fighting. Without you there to offer perspective, they're drowning in drama. Without you there to provide stability, they're unstable. Your absence became a mirror showing them exactly how much they were leaning on you while giving nothing back. And that realization, that uncomfortable truth, is something they can't stop discussing because they can't escape it. You're not even in the room, and you're still the most powerful presence in their awareness. Let's be brutally honest about what's happening. They're finally understanding that you've been operating on a completely different level. While they were focused on winning arguments, you were focused on understanding truth. While they were collecting allies, you were collecting wisdom. While they were building facades, you were building character. While they were playing short-term social games, you were making long-term strategic decisions. And now that enough time has passed, the difference in outcomes is undeniable. Look at where you are versus where they are. You're at peace while they're in chaos. You're growing while they're stagnant. You're expanding while they're contracting. You're free while they're trapped in the same patterns they've been running for years. This isn't luck. This isn't coincidence. This is the natural result of different approaches to life. You've been making decisions from a place of awareness while they've been reacting from a place of ego. You've been thinking 3 moves ahead while they've been focused on the immediate moment. You've been building sustainable foundations while they've been constructing houses of cards. The conversations about you now carry a tone of bewildered respect. How did they know to move before that happened? How did they avoid that trap that everyone else fell into? How did they position themselves so perfectly for this opportunity? They're asking these questions because your success looks effortless to them. They don't see the internal work. They don't see the disciplined choices. They don't see the strategic thinking. They just see results that seem almost magical because they're so far beyond what they're capable of manifesting themselves. And here's the thing that's both amusing and slightly sad. They're trying to copy you now, trying to mimic your moves, trying to replicate your strategy. But it's not working because they're copying actions without understanding consciousness. They're imitating behavior without embodying awareness. They're trying to play your game without doing the internal work that makes the game possible. So they watch, they study, they talk, trying to decode what makes you different, never quite grasping that the difference isn't in what you do, it's in who you've become. And becoming isn't something you can fake or copy, it's something you have to earn through transformation. So here you are, the person everyone's talking about when they think you're not listening. The one who sees more, knows more, understands more than you'll ever need to prove. You've become a living paradox that fascinates and frightens in equal measure. Too aware to be manipulated, too evolved to be baited, too strategic to be predictable, too sovereign to be controlled. And all of this without ever raising your voice or demanding recognition. Your revolution has been silent but undeniable. The conversations about you will continue. People will keep trying to figure you out. They'll keep analyzing your moves. They'll keep discussing your insights. They'll keep marveling at your accuracy. Let them. Their fascination is not your concern, their confusion is not your responsibility, their attempts to decode you are not your problem. You've learned that the highest form of power is not needing to explain it. The deepest form of knowing is not needing to defend it. The purest form of presence is not needing to announce it. Keep walking your path with that quiet certainty that makes others uncomfortable. Keep seeing what you see without apology. Keep knowing what you know without justification. Keep being 10 steps ahead without broadcasting your position. Your silence is not weakness. Your discretion is not secrecy. Your awareness is not arrogance. You're simply operating from a level of consciousness that most people will spend their entire lives never reaching. And that's not superior, that's just fact. Some people wake up, some people don't. Some people do the work, some people avoid it. Some people develop sight, some people choose blindness. You've done the work, you've earned your knowing, you've paid for your awareness with pain, with betrayal, with lessons that almost broke you but instead built you. So let them talk, let them wonder, let them try to figure out how you always seem to know. Because the truth they're circling, the answer they're seeking, the secret they're trying to extract is simpler than they imagine and more profound than they can comprehend. You stopped performing and started perceiving. You stopped reacting and started responding. You stopped being who they wanted and started being who you are. And in that shift, that quiet revolution, you became untouchable, unknowable, and undeniable. If this message resonated with the truth living in your bones, show me by hitting that like button. Subscribe to join a community of awakened souls who see beyond the surface. Drop 888 in the comments to claim your frequency. Share this with another chosen one who needs to hear they're not alone in their knowing. And remember, your silence speaks volumes to those who have ears to hear. Your knowing illuminates paths for those who have eyes to see. Keep being the mystery they can't solve. Keep being the presence they can't ignore. Keep being the truth they can't escape. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to understand everything. And that, chosen one, is exactly what you're doing. Until next time, stay aware, stay ahead, and most importantly, stay authentically, powerfully, unapologetically you.